Number 10. Shadow Withered Chica. All of the Withered animatronics are just horrific. So what happens when you combine them with the Shadow animatronics? You get gloriously terrifying creations like Shadowed Withered Chica. Withered Chica is already really creepy due to the fact that she is missing both of her hands and really only has wire left in place of them. Her bright yellow coloring usually helps to offset this creepy detail when it comes to her appearance, but the Shadow version of her gets no such counterbalance, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on your opinion. Her dislocated jaw is also highlighted even more here by the fact that she's in shadow, with her bib becoming a disturbing beacon in the darkness. The only thing you can like see looming when she comes towards you, you're like, ah, her bib! Never thought I'd be so scared of a bib. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more FNAF lists, you know we want to give them to you, so be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Shadow Sprite. Shadow Sprite appears to be a completely original animatronic design. Sprite is described as a mammal and a carnivoran. Carnivoran meaning likely that Sprite is an eater of meat or flesh, so a carnivore. Carnivoran's kind of just another word for carnivore, I believe. So you definitely would want to watch out with this animatronic, as it won't just store you somewhere, it'll likely ingest you and potentially ingest your soul as well, who knows. Maybe this is the only animatronic who doesn't really gain remnant from killing people and can't really extract that, storing the soul, but instead completely devours its prey. Sprite appears to have 2 large arms that are wing-like save for the fingers on the ends of them. It has feet like a dog and giant ears that are almost bunny or dog-like in appearance. Kind of reminds me of those like floppy bunny ears. Number 8. Crazed Shadow Puppet. So there are actually a whole series of these shadow animatronics and I love them. I love these little like crazed animatronics, their expressions are great. For some reason they really remind me of Bendy and the Ink Machine. Maybe it's that wash of insanity, or maybe it's all the dripping inky-like look of their faces. But yes, it's definitely giving me Bendy vibes. Crazed Shadow Puppet is probably my favorite of them all, as we can also see that not only is there something very disturbed about this grinning, wide-eyed expression, but you can also see upon close inspection that the puppet faceplate here is cracked as well, which also feels somewhat symbolic to me. Having a face with a crack in it while also seemingly losing your mind? I mean, it's like your mind has a crack in it, you know what I mean? Number 7. Shadow Mangle. As much as I thought Shadow Mangle would be terrifying, and well, it is, I'm actually not finding this to be one of the most scary on our list, but it's still pretty scary. Shadow Mangle, even in one iteration, is pictured as being fully whole, although even then we kind of get some like Cthulhu-like vibes from this animatronic. The version of Mangle is pictured as being fully together with a big bushy tail and furry fox face and ears. Its teeth and eyes glow a bright white and it sports a little bow tie, but while that all sounds not too bad in terms of scare factor, behind it in shadow loom a series of tentacles, if you will, obviously meant to be the pieces and bits that couldn't quite fit back together. Anything that is like tentacles looming behind it, I'm like, no, not gonna do that. That doesn't seem like a good idea. Number 6. Shadow Chica. Oddly enough, Chica is one of the few main cast at Freddy's who doesn't really seem to have too much of her own shadow version. We don't really know why this is, but just because Chica has a lot of weird love coming her way doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve to also have a super scary and mysterious alternate shadow version. Fans of course have looked to rectify this by giving her one. Granted, you have to be careful where you share said fan-made animatronics online in terms of communities, as some have attempted to do so in canon-based wikis where it's considered a major no-no. So yeah, but they're still out there. I like that they also still exist on those wikis. They've just been like, you can't do this here, but we're not gonna like delete it, we're just gonna like move it around. Shadow Chica is typically depicted as being less rounded than our FNAF 1 counterpart and a little bit more curvy instead. Why is Chica always drawn curvy, even with FNAF 1? I don't know. Her eyes, teeth, and the eyes of her cupcake stand out, glowing a bright white. So many curvy Chicas. I can't, even when it's not Toy Chica, people are like, let's give her a waist. I'm like, she's like a chicken. I feel like, I don't know. You can be either way, really. I'm not trying to body shame Chica here, just FYI, just to be clear. I just think it's interesting the way that people choose to draw her. Number 5. Shadow Springtrap. Not sure if it makes sense to have a Shadow Springtrap, considering that Springtrap when he first shows up is still alive, or alive in the sense of being a shambling corpse that can still move and think, I presume, but he was trapped within a Spring Bonnie suit. I guess as alive as Springtrap gets. The shadow animatronics are typically all kinda ghost-like or glitch-like in terms of their appearance and what they stand for. I mean, they're kind of mysterious actually. We don't really know a lot about shadow animatronics. I think we had a whole video about shadow animatronics and like, what are they really? In my opinion, they're kind of like mirrorverse versions of almost all the animatronics we know, love, and fear, like their other half. It feels weird to have this for some reason for an animatronic who is also a person, but just because it's somewhat unconventional, it doesn't mean that fans can't imagine what a shadow Springtrap would look like. And the answer is, of course, terrifying, because Springtrap's already terrifying, so you shadow it, still scary. Number 4. Shadow Toy Foxy. Shadow Toy Foxy is a very different looking shadow type animatronic. Instead of being quite as dark with pinprick white eyes like other shadow animatronics, this version is a bold purple that is somewhat see-through, revealing their endoskeleton through their somewhat translucent purple outer exosuit. Kinda reminds me of those old Macs people had in the early 2000s where they had like colorful plastic on the back that you could see all the inner workings and the motherboard through. I might be aging myself here, but that is a thing. I remember those Macs. I don't think I ever owned one though, sadly. Of course, this could also just be an artistic rendition of what would be a much more shadowy animatronic should it appear in game, because, you know, this is a drawing. Shadow Toy Foxy not only looks scary, but also manages to look refined as well, keeping their bow tie, lipstick, and bright cheeks. Number 3. Nightmare Shadow Bonnie. Nightmare animatronics are already terrifying enough. We don't need to give them anything else to make them even more scary, do we? But that is just what this fan-made version does, so I guess maybe we do. Nightmare Shadow Bonnie is a version of the Nightmare Bonnie animatronic, one that happens to be more shrouded in darkness due to its shadow-like inky black coloring. However, even in shadow, this animatronic still gives us some detail so we can see how tattered it is. For some reason, I also find its expression, face shape, and its teeth to be even more horrifying than the standard Nightmare Bonnie animatronic version. So maybe we do need Shadow Nightmare animatronics, like a whole series of them. They'd be really scary. Number 2. Shadow Toy Chica. Shadow Toy Chica is maybe the most horrifying of all of the fan-made shadow animatronics, because of how hot everyone is still obsessed with making her. Once again, this is Toy Chica, so Shadow Toy Chica is not removed from that. We're still making her like a weirdly sexy animatronic. Well, yeah, like I said, she is a version of Toy Chica. Shadow Toy Chica is typically depicted as having a big, jagged grin and an X on her chest, both of which, along with her pupils, glow a bright white. Sometimes she can also be seen carrying her cupcake, which glows a bright white or neon blue. Shadow Toy Chica also has her own Twitter profile that someone made for her under the username Shadow Thought Chica. I think that says it all when it comes to just how scary this fan-made shadow animatronic is. Number 1. Nightmare Shadow Mangle. I thought that Shadow Toy Chica would be the most scary in principle, and then Nightmare Shadow Mangle came along. Mangle is already a horrifying animatronic, so this really just adds a layer to that. Nightmare Shadow Mangle is a lot more intimidating, considering that it's really hard to see. Mainly what we can see of this animatronic is its bright white glowing teeth and its eyes, and the eyes that belong to its endo puppet parrot. Yikes! This version of Mangle would be hard to spot if you face it in person, and when you likely did end up noticing it, it would probably be way too late. It would be like, I got you, and you'd be like, dead.
In a 10, Scrap Bonnie. Ah, Bonnie, the scariest animatronic to some, even Scott Cawthon, who would have nightmares about you. But this is probably why he didn't make you a scrap animatronic, yet here we are with the fan base once again, showcasing that their only desire is to watch the world burn and laugh while we all go up in flames, but then miraculously not die somehow, only for it to be explained years later in a random book that a load of hardcore game purists claim isn't canon. However, Scrap Bonnie is definitely worthy of making this list because, like, look at it. I love rabbits, they're freaking adorable, but zombie rabbits always creeped me out for some reason, and this reminds me of a zombie rabbit. The exposed endoskeleton, the random weird claw-like thing they got going on. It's like if Scrap Baby was reassembling herself and then Elizabeth was like, no, I want to possess Bonnie! And then she remade herself as Bonnie. Honestly, I'm surprised Scott didn't pull something like that at this point. With like this just the simple explanation of Elizabeth liked Bonnie, and then that's it, that's the only thing we get. Damn, maybe that's the scariest thing of all. And at 9, Scrap Nightmare Bonnie. What's that? 2 Bonnie animatronics in a row on a list not about Bonnie? Yes! But mostly because I was scrolling through Google Images and these two caught my eye first. Scrap Nightmare Bonnie is scary for all the reasons I listed above, and then you just add Nightmare to it. Although I guess that doesn't really make for a compelling number, and I should talk about it more. The concept of the Nightmare animatronics is certainly freaky, but the fact that they aren't real kind of like soothes me, you know? Like, sure, none of these animatronics are real, but even in their universe, the Nightmare animatronics aren't real and can't really hurt you. But with the implication of the scrapped nature of this version, it seems to suggest against that idea, and I think that makes it freakier. But also the potential that the arm at the end of that one security breach trailer that was never referenced again, by the way, Steel Wool, looks like Nightmare Freddy's arm, and it only adds to the idea that they're not going to be fake for very long. Like, they're going to be real animatronics very soon, and I don't like that. If that ends up being the thing, if they make the Nightmare animatronics actual animatronics in Security Breach, this channel is done with FNAF. Straight up. And it ate Scrap Baby Endo. Scrap Baby is already the freakiest of all the Scrap animatronics, or at least the canon Scrap animatronics, but never did I think about what her endoskeleton would look like, because let's be honest, that's kind of freaky. I mean, her name is literally Baby. I don't want to talk about her endoskeleton, that'll put me on like some kind of watch list. However, this goddamn Scrap Baby Endo concept is horrifying. Why does it have boobs? It's an endoskeleton! You don't actually have to give it boobs! Why did Baby even reassemble herself? In that way is my question. Is it because she like needs to be able to pass as a human like she does in the Fourth Closet novel? Like seriously, this has been something that has always bugged me because like why? Why did Scrap Baby reassemble themselves with a chest? And then like why are people including this as a part of her endoskeleton? This hurts me on like a deep level. I don't want to think about it anymore. Let's move on. And at 7, Scrap Glitch Trap. You can fight me all you want about my opinions on Springtrap and the fact that he's not an animatronic because he's just a dude in the suit. But there's no way you can fight me on the fact that Glitch Trap isn't an animatronic. Firstly, he's just game code with no real world equivalent aside from William Afton. Secondly, he's literally just a suit. You can tell by the fabric. The different design to the Bonnie we know and the stitching around his joints and, you know, it's a suit. But this version of Glitch Trap, known as Scrap Glitch Trap, is designed to be an animatronic, therefore it counts for this list. This thing is fucking horrifying. I've always had a soft spot for Glitch Trap, okay? I hate this thing because, like, you know, it gives me creepy bear vibes, if you know what I mean. You know, if you look at old memes, you'll know. It's an old meme, but it checks out. It's a specific bear that may have candy in his white windowless van. Anyway, I hate this kind of thing. And the way that Glitch Trap just like stands there and waves and then slowly gets closer to you, who's playing a child in the game, doesn't sit right with me. Hence why I avoid picking up tapes, because I don't like him. Now, with all that said, this version is still worse. The actual Scrap appearance, along with like the desaturation of the costume and the exposed endoskeleton and all the wires, it's too much for me. I can't do it. I'm done. And at 6, Scrap Puppet. I don't know why, but like every version of the puppet intended to be scary gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like the Reaper puppet, which I talk about in multiple FNAF videos, and is honestly the epitome of horrifying for me, is the Reaper puppet. And then there's like the Havoc puppet of the Dramidibus series, and now we have Scrap Puppet. This was only a concept and fan art, but it doesn't actually appear in any of the games, but it's still creepy, okay? It doesn't have to appear in a game. This is fan animatronics for a reason. Doesn't appear in game, and I don't think that there's a mod for it either if you watch that video. Although that is a good idea. You should make a mod for this. There should just be a FNAF game that's all puppets. Anyway, while some people may not be able to make a game for their creations, you can make a mod, or you can like make a model for it in Source Filmmaker. and then let people use it for mods. Anyways, this particular image that I found just looks like the beginning of a scrap puppet jump scare, as if you were salvaging them in FNAF 6. And obviously it's not actually in the game because the puppet was captured by Lefty, but still, this just, it puts me on edge. And then it has like all like the little tentacle things coming off of it and like a creepy smile. Like I don't know, it puts me on edge, or it's edging me because of those tentacles. Is that too far? I mean, Food Wars said it, so like, can I make the joke? Halfway through into number 5, scrap Funtime Freddy. Funtime Freddy is a particularly interesting animatronic, looking like he just came back from filming a video with James Charles. Does he even make videos anymore? I don't know, nor do I really care. Funtime Freddy is creepy simply because he's like the most put together version of Freddy there is, ignoring Toy Freddy. Especially with the recent revelation, thanks to the Faz Facts from FNAF AR, that revealed that the Funtime animatronics, despite being introduced in the 5th game, were among some of the first animatronics that Afton built, which I think was meant to serve as a way to show that he always had murderous intentions, but still. Take the creep factor you get from Funtime Freddy, then add on to it the scrap adjective, and boom, you got yourself some good nightmare fuel. But like, not like this would be in your nightmares, like rather I think it would just provoke some nightmares, but it is certainly not for the faint of heart. In at 4, Nightmare Scrap Baby. Really? You just had to take probably the freakiest bitch of the bunch and turn her into a nightmare scrap version. What the living hell, man. Okay, I'll admit that this should be higher on the list, so actually, you know what, I'll move it. Okay, there we go, it's at number 4 now. Like, it was originally at number 8, but then I switched it with Scrap Baby's endo specifically so that I could say that I already said that Scrap Baby is the scariest of the scrap animatronics. Yes, this was a bit. And turning them into a nightmare version that wants to eat my soul is too much, okay? Amanda and I are the only ones who are supposed to do the whole soul eating thing. But Nightmare Scrap Baby looks like she wants to eat my firstborn child. Like, do you understand how absolutely terrifying this thing is? Some of them even look like Pennywise after they're old and gray and been doing too much no snow. Pennywise would be scared of Nightmare Scrap Baby. Afton would disown Elizabeth as his daughter for this. This is literally the stuff of nightmares, which I guess was the point. So, good job, guys. You got me to freak. Congratulations. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Scrap Orville. I found this Scrap Orville through a mod that replaced Orville, I'm assuming, with the Scrap Orville version. Orville Elephant isn't a particularly scary character, and that remains the same for the rest of the mediocre melodies. However, this Scrap Orville mod, made using a model by DeviantArt user Holupaxum, based on a design of Reddit user u/fandomtrash198787, is honestly terrifying. Scrapping animatronics always makes them scarier, and with the lore implications that the original Orville gave with his death lines in Ultimate Custom Night, I can only imagine what a Scrap Orville will add, and I've stated it time and time again, the lore is the scariest thing in the series to me. And the sheer lore implications of not only a Scrap Orville, but all these fan-made scrap animatronics is actually haunting how terrifying it is. If you've ever tried to explain anything in this series in at least somewhat of a reasonable way and not a whole Sans' phone guy kind of way, you'll understand my struggle and you'll relate to me on this. But ultimately, in at number 2, Scrap Trap Endo. Scrap Trap is already a creepy animatronic, somehow changing from a small, realistically sized head in Springtrap to a giant, weird alien head in FNAF 6. Scrap Trap is definitely one of the most interesting Afton looks. It looks like he's going to Coachella and trying on a load of outfits. However, this man needs to keep as much clothing on as possible because this version of Scrap Trap's endoskeleton, or what it would look like, is absolutely horrific. And yes, that's what I meant by clothes, not because Afton is a walking mass of exposed muscle and absolutely unsightly in the most horrendous ways. No, it's because his endoskeleton for the Scrap Trap animatronic is freaky. Like, why does his head have to be that shape? It's an animatronic, not a freaking pop figure. Scrap Trap needs a pop figure, though. I will definitely buy that. So, Funko, do it. Still, either way, Scrap Trap endoskeleton is literally one of my worst nightmares. And finally, in at number 1, Scrap Glamrocks. With Security Breach on the horizon, releasing in actually a month as this video is going out, I believe, we still had to include the group of animatronics as scrap versions on this list. And honestly, it's pretty accurate considering how Chica in that promotional image and the recent trailer seems to be pretty scrapped already. They wouldn't really have to do much there to have that really work out. However, the versions that I've actually seen are scarily horrific in a way that makes me concerned if they'll be in the real game. I don't think these would be in the game, but based on that old theory that I had about how these characters are acting like zombies, this makes me feel like that theory is a little too right. These animatronics being made into scrap animatronics are honestly some of the weirdest custom scrap versions I've seen, and that makes them the scariest. I tried to stay away from anything newer, or I guess that I had covered in previous alternate fan version videos, but holy crap, these scrap rocks, as I want to call them, are absolutely haunting. This is what the Halloween update for this game should be. These are actually perfect, so thank you. And it's 10 FNAF 2020. These Glamrock animatronics are from the FNAF 2020 series of drawings from DeviantArt user Senior Artsy, who I believe we've seen on this channel before in some other fan versions videos. However, I don't want to call out one animatronic specifically, but rather the whole collection of Glamrock versions from this 2020 set, because while yes, these animatronics will mostly be in the game, with the exception of some like Bonnie, these color palettes and designs are much more sinister than their previous versions, especially Vanny and Freddy, since giving Freddy a panda face, I don't know why, but just for some reason makes me kinda scared of him. And I think it's because the rest of his body isn't a panda, and it's just his face, so it's like he's wearing a mask and gonna rob you or something. I don't know the psychology behind it, but I think we can all agree, especially that Vanny looks like she should not be playing in a kid's game. And at 9, Glamrock Bonnie. I think the freakiest part about Glamrock Bonnie is just the fact that they're not going to be in the game. So far as I know at least, the only mention of Bonnie will be a bowling alley that we probably aren't gonna get to use, but for the most part, like with the rest of these animatronics, the designs aren't scary. Well, aside from the Minecraft model. Like, what's with people and making Minecraft animations for FNAF characters? And like FNAF, I don't understand it. I'd also like it to be noted that instead of animations, I spelt animatronics when I was writing that list initially, and I also did it again while writing this line. That's how much FNAF has taken over my life. I can't write animation anymore. So I hope you people are happy. But either way, these versions, aside from one version from a Twitter user called Manute Art, aren't really all that menacing. But the idea that people are creating additional animatronics is scary enough for me, because I don't want to deal with the additional lore that would come from that, okay? And at 8, Glamrock Foxy. Speaking of not wanting to deal with additional lore, Glamrock Foxy would also add a lot of unnecessary amount of annoyance to the game. At this point, Roxy is basically the love child of Foxy and Bonnie, and even has a name that kind of reflects on the whole like meant to be Foxy thing, since Roxy is just a combination of Rock and Foxy. Like, it's also an actual name, but I figured I'd mention that it's basically a combination of the two words, and she plays guitar, and so there's a link to Bonnie. However, the main issue with this comes from the fact that Foxy is just, it's scarier than Bonnie. I know all you die-hard Bonnie stans are gonna come for me, and I get that Scott had nightmares about him, but honestly, there's just no contest between these two characters. Foxy is scarier than Bonnie, and that means that his Glamrock would end up being scarier as well, especially if you take the toy animatronics as an example. The Glamrocks are very close design-wise to the toys, so keeping that in mind, the toy variant of Foxy is still scarier than Bonnie's. Case closed. And at 7, Roblox. I looked up Glamrock versions of characters, and somehow I kept getting loads of different Roblox versions of the FNAF animatronics. And this is goddamn terrifying for me. Why do you ask? Well, because it's Roblox. I don't like Roblox. The only good Roblox game is paintball, and that's it, okay? Anytime we talk about Roblox, I feel an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me, because ever since that list about like the worst things that people did on Roblox or something along those lines, I've seen the Roblox community as horrifically toxic and just something I can't really stand. Especially with the comments on like that one time I played Roblox on the channel and everyone got mad at me for just playing paintball, but like that environment combined with FNAF, which is already the bane of my existence at this point, and you get some pretty horrifying experiences that I don't want to deal with. And at 6, Withered Glamrock Freddy. I've said it before, Withered animatronics are probably some of the weirdest and creepiest animatronics there are. I personally find Withered Bonnie way creepier than Nightmare Bonnie, probably because of the whole lack of a face thing. But with the new Glamrock animatronics on their way in a month, it was only a matter of time before someone withered them. Searching Withered Chica only really gets you pictures of like Chica from the Broken teasers and the trailer, so instead I'm going with Withered Glamrock Freddy because these are creepy as hell. Every version of Withered Glamrock Freddy makes me concerned that we're climbing into his belly to pilot him like some really energy inefficient mech suit. Like, thinking about it,
That's a really bad idea. This guy not only looks scary, but also made me realize the error of Gregory's ways, which makes him even worse. When we ultimately do get crushed at the end of this game, I'm calling it now so that when it does happen, I can say I called it. This is how I imagine Glamrock Freddy looking. Or, if this is post FNAF 3 and the company has been ruined, maybe this is what the animatronics look like, except they're using those sound illusion discs to make us think otherwise. Halfway through into number 5, Glamrock Puppet. Again, every time I make a list about discussing creepy animatronics, a freaking puppet always makes it on. That's mostly because the puppet is a freaky character to begin with, and I feel like the phone guy whenever I call the puppet creepy, but it is creepy. And the Glamrock puppet is no exception. This character wasn't originated in the Furries Rage game like I figured it would be, but instead it's just like a separate design that no matter what just looks like it wants to bring me to the back of the pizza joint to show me how the pepperoni gets put on the pizza. And no, I don't mean literally. Yes, that was an allusion to something else. And not only does it come with its own creepy ass concept art, but it also comes with Minecraft skins, because of course it does. This is one of the weirdest versions of the puppet, not taking into account Scrap Puppet, Withered Puppet, or Reaper Puppet from Final Nights 3. This is like the 4th weirdest and scariest puppet, and there's nothing really scary about it. It feels wrong to me, and the whole pepperoni thing. And at 4, Glamrock Plush. Okay, so technically these are official and licensed plushies, so they're not really fan-made, but there are other versions on Etsy that are actually fan-made, so there are some fan-made versions. And honestly, those are the ones that you should be getting, because look at these fucking things. Why are the Glamrock security breach plushies so funky looking? They look horrible. Like, this was actually so much of an issue that many people had with these plushies that it caused a bit of an uproar within the community when they were first revealed. Not only that, but because, you know, Funko has a history of just leaking everything for some reason, and they don't look like the other plushies that they've released before. Like, if you're gonna make real plushies, at least make them look the same as they did in the VR game, so that we can like actually really see them and hold them, because we've already seen them before. It's not that hard, guys, really. These security breach Glamrock plushes are some of the worst proportioned and most horrifying plushies I've seen. And I saw the one that Scott Lang gave to his daughter in Ant-Man, and the bloodthirsty minion my father gave to my sister. These are still the most horrific ones that I've seen, though, okay? If I had these, I would be scared for my life. Although, mentioning that, they are on my Amazon wish list, so if you guys want to... I'm just kidding, I don't have an Amazon wish list, I'm not a girl. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Blacklight Glamrocks. Some of the Blacklight versions of Glamrock animatronics are absolutely horrifying. While I'm not sure if the plushie versions are official products, the fan blender versions for the characters are freaking nuts. Chica with blue skin is not only off-putting, but actually haunting. Same with a yellow Roxy. These are like if the Glamrock animatronics were Pokemon, and then like these were the shiny versions of them. So far, the only Blacklight animatronics that we know of are the ones from Help Wanted that only really appeared in the animatronic maintenance minigames in Blacklight mode, but that were never used again and that we don't really get to see. It's terrifying to think about the lore implications as well. Like if this place turns off the light at night, but then turns on like a black light or something, like how do they change color? How are they not just neon whatever their color is? Because these peeps are colorful as hell. So why not just glow your own damn colors? See, my head is starting to hurt even just thinking about these things. Just please, keep them away from me. And ultimately, in at number 2, Nightmare Glamrocks. Nightmare animatronics are designed to be the scariest versions of their respective animatronics, and that's why there are so many fan-made versions, because while elements like rugged exosuits and stomach mouths are common, you can really just head anywhere, same with scrap versions. However, these Nightmare versions are something else. Considering their original pristine appearance in the trailers and promo images, well, with the exception of Chica, there is a stark contrast between the two versions. They seem to be just the ultimate nightmare aesthetic going on with these characters specifically. I don't know why these animatronics specifically make me think that way, because maybe it's because like Glamrock Chica is my babe, but now she's not, but like even still. Glamrock Bonnie isn't even a thing yet, but their Nightmare Glamrock version is scarier than their normal Nightmare version. Stay away from these, don't look them up, although you've already seen them because it's in the edit. So I'm sorry. And finally, in at number 1, scrap Glamrock animatronics. With Security Breach releasing in less than a month, we had to include a group of animatronics as scrapped versions on this list. And honestly, it's actually a good idea, considering how Chica in that promotional image seems pretty scrapped already. They really wouldn't have to do much to make that work out. However, the versions that I've actually seen are scarily horrific in a way that makes me concerned if they'll be in the real game. I don't think these would be in the game, but based on my old theory that I had about how these characters are kind of acting like zombies and like eating animatronic, or I guess not animatronic, but like other robotic parts, this look just makes me feel too right. Especially when we see in the trailer Chica getting progressively more destroyed. I feel like this might actually end up being a thing. These animatronics being made into scrap animatronics are honestly some of the freakiest custom scrap versions that I've seen. This is some freaky scrap. I tried to stay away from anything like that was like too pristine, I guess. Cause like what I used to do in previous alternate fan version videos was just look up adjectives. Like if it was like scary nightmare and like fan versions, I would just look up like withered nightmare, something else nightmare. I would just add that. I would just add adjectives to nightmare's name. So I tried to avoid that this time, but scrap and nightmare are always a classic way to go, okay? If there's gonna be a Halloween update for this game though, Scott, or I guess Steel Wool at this point, you need to add these. That would be fun.
And at 10, Nightmare Funtime Freddy. Well, what did you expect? Of course, a Nightmare version of Funtime Freddy is going to be on this list. It's basically like a requirement for any animatronic list, because Funtime Freddy is probably one of the creepiest and weirdest versions of them all. Nightmare Funtime Freddy is what you'd guess, in essence a recolored Nightmare Fredbear, actually. Instead of Nightmare Freddy, which I guess is understandable, but the real gem comes from when they make the Nightmare version look like the classic, like plastic toy look that the original Funtimes have. Because I don't know why, but for some reason the Nightmare aesthetic with like the toy look of the Funtimes just makes it absolutely horrifying from both fronts. At this point, I never want toys again, but I'm going to buy various pop figures. I also am going to have nightmares about this version eating other Nightmare animatronics. Like, I think he was doing it to save me, like a Glamrock Freddy situation, but like still, okay, he could snatch me up without a fight. He could rip me in two. Nightmare Funtime Freddy, that's not where your teeth go. And at 9, Nightmare Baby. Originating in the fan game Baby's Nightmare Circus, I believe, or just being the basis for it, Nightmare Baby is pretty damn spooky. Being the likely originator for the stomach mouth present on the other Nightmare animatronics already made the thought of her as a nightmare terrifying, but throw in the classic Nightmare rundown aesthetic again despite being a plastic casing, like with Nightmare Funtime Freddy, and the countless sharp teeth in the animatronic mouth, this thing will make you see stars. Oh, and adding the Nightmare look to animatronics that can already move their face was bad enough, but thinking about it or actually seeing their face move and like reveal a Nightmare endoskeleton is even worse. And at 8, Nightmare Toy Chica. Nightmare Toy Chica is honestly what you'd expect from a Nightmare version of your favorite chicken robot. Not robot chicken, chicken robot. All the glory of Toy Chica with the horror of a nightmare, the countless sharp teeth, the stomach mouth, torn body even though they're a toy in plastic so it doesn't really make any sense, it should just be cracked. Exposed endoskeleton, you name it, she's got it. She's got it going on. And those without a beak are even worse than you'd expect. You'd expect that without the beak there would be less teeth, but no. In fact, they have the same amount of teeth and they're just ready to bite your head off. If anyone was going to have caused the bite of 87, it would be Nightmare Toy Chica, and not just because of the ultimate custom night line, okay? That's a can of worms that we've already covered in multiple videos. And at 7, Nightmare Glamrock Bonnie. Yet another set of animatronics without any Bonnie representation. The Security Breach Glamrock animatronics, from what we've seen in the trailers so far, don't have a Glamrock Bonnie. He really only appears as the mascot of bowling. However, fans here yet again made Glamrock versions of Bonnie, but those weren't really scary. So in classic FNAF fashion, if you want something to be scarier, you just throw Nightmare in front of it, and then boom, you have an unholy abomination that will eat your soul and devour your balls. Nevertheless, Nightmare Glamrock Bonnie looks exactly how you'd expect a Nightmare version of Glamrock Bonnie to look, with shoulder pads. That's the scariest part. And at 6, Nightmare Toy Bonnie. I thought that the Nightmare versions couldn't get any worse, yet here we are. I remember someone commenting on the fan versions of Chica list saying that it was more like a fan versions of Toy Chica list, but the toy animatronics are just another version of the original, so it wasn't a different list. This is a monstrosity that needs to be banished to the depths of hell and then sent by Satan from hell to like the empty because he doesn't want to deal with it. I would understand why. Like, looking this thing up, I didn't expect to be as frightened as I was, but holy ever-loving crap, this shocked me. The toy aesthetic, again, just seems to make these versions worse. I don't know what it is. It's just like the toy animatronics as nightmares just
make the absolute scariest versions of the characters. I don't get it. Like, if you have any theories as to why this is a thing, like maybe like a psychological or something, I don't know, leave it in the comments. Halfway through into number 5, Nightmare entered. The beauty of Nightmare versions of animatronics is that they can really be anything. There are plenty of directions to go because everyone will consider different things to be nightmare fuel. Some are very clearly in the style of other Nightmare animatronics, you know, lots of sharp teeth, stomach mouths. Some are spider-like versions that are hunched over and wider than they are long. Some have more limbs or are combined with other animatronics like Baby or Funtime Foxy to create a unique nightmare appearance. You can lean more into the clown aesthetic, or you go a million miles north and do something that nobody else has done. But that's just nightmares. That's what makes this kind of thing fun. And in doing so, you make something that not even Scott himself would have thought of. And isn't that kind of beautiful? Even if all these versions are making my currently blue pants brown, it's kind of causing me to black out a little bit. And 4, Twisted Nightmare. The Twisted animatronics are probably the most horrific animatronics ever described. These buggers are disgusting and horrific and are only approachable when using illusion discs to make themselves look presentable. I get that. Combine that with Nightmare, who is the scariest nightmare animatronic from the games, and oh my lord, you have one hell beast. Twisted Nightmare is everything you want to avoid when creating something for kids. I can hardly put it into words, honestly. Like, I'm glad that there's pictures that can be shown, because I honestly don't know how to go about describing this. If Hell's Gates had opened and released the entirety of FNAF lore into real life, and then the Joy of Creation animatronics emerged, including not just the ones from the game, but literally every other animatronic from the series in an ignited form, and then they all merged and became Twisted, that's half of how this demonic monstrosity would have been created. It's wrong, I feel deceived, I feel sharp objects being stabbed into my flesh. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Nightmare Springtrap. Nightmare Springtrap is certainly a sight. Not for sore eyes though, no. If anything, this is going to make your eyes sore. However, every iteration of Nightmare Springtrap basically does the same thing. He gets the classic nightmare teeth, but the rest of him remains largely the same. Maybe he gets a slight change to his ears or his skull shape, but other than that, Nightmare Springtrap is mostly just regular Springtrap. The majority of people believe that Springtrap is already scary, and he already has most of the appearance of a Nightmare animatronic, being one of the most destroyed characters in the games, and especially in FNAF 3. One version I saw had like eyes covering all of him, but for the most part he looked either Springtrap or just like a larger fetch, but still terrifying. And ultimately, in at number 2, Nightmare Glamrocks. Nightmare animatronics are designed to be the scariest versions of their respective animatronic. That's why there's so many fan-made versions, because while elements like rugged exosuits and stomach mouths are common, like I said before, you can really head anywhere. Same with scrap versions, especially with scrap versions. However, these Nightmare versions are something else. Considering their pristine appearance in the trailers and promo images, well, with the exception of Chica, but there's a stark contrast between these two different versions. They seem to just have the ultimate nightmare aesthetic going on, and it's not even just because they look like plastic toy animatronics. Like, it's like this is like the step up from the nightmare toys. Like, I don't know what it is about these characters specifically. It makes me think some kind of way. Maybe it's because the Glamrock Chica is my bae, and now she's just horrifying even more, but again, that's kind of a kink. Like, I don't get it. Glamrock Bonnie isn't even a thing yet, and their Nightmare Glamrock version is scarier than their normal Nightmare version. I know that Bonnie got his own number, I wanted to reiterate, okay? Stay away from these if you can, and the reason these are higher is because it's a whole group of them. And finally, in at number 1, Hellmare. This was another animatronic that was recommended to me, this time in the comments of part 1 of alternate fan versions of Fredbear, and I can see why. The Hellmare version of Nightmare Fredbear is probably the absolute single most horrific FNAF-oriented thing I have ever seen. Like, I'm going to have to make a whole list about the Hellmare animatronics or something, because this is the absolute craziest shit that I have ever seen. How did I not know about these before? Hellmare Fredbear can only be described as a true nightmarish abomination from hell, and so the name is accurate. This thing had not one, not 2, but 3 separate mouths, 2 heads, but not only does it have 2 heads, those heads are reversed from one another, so the head on top and the one on the bottom, they spin 180 degrees, and you either get Nightmare or you get Nightmare Fredbear. Yeah, this dude is both animatronics combined, and I didn't even see that at first. Once I noticed it, I'll admit, I might have peed my pants a little bit, okay? Come on, 2 heads, 2 sets of 4-fingered hands, and half of these parts being Nightmare, and half of them being Nightmare Fredbear. Look, I'm not usually actually scared when it comes to these things. I play it up for the camera and for entertainment, and that's why I'm so, like, light and fluffy on camera. Like, yes, they're scary, but I'm not actually worrying about them. I'm not playing this up. This is probably going to actually give me nightmares. Like, what kind of
hell-raising, sadistic motherfucker came up with this idea?